Ariana and Alain. I have just quick, simple questions. Just want to know real quick. Ariana, your character right now, from what we're seeing in the episodes, it seems like she is the voice of both logic and faith. Was it difficult to convey both of those concepts with one character?
Yeah, I mean, I think Gabriella, every time I was shooting, I don't think that thought ever came to mind, like, how do you balance logic and faith? But I think outwardly, I mean, it is super challenging, but I think that's also very human. That's probably the most normal thing that any person experiences, is where you're constantly having this internal conflict of what you believe and how to actually practice it in the real world. And that's kind of the experience that I think Gabriella has. There is obviously a lot of knowledge and logic that comes behind many of her decisions. But when you are someone who is faith-based, you also have to be a little more, I guess, more willing to accept things that may not be as scientific or backed by reasoning. And I think that's kind of how she ends up experiencing many of the encounters she has with Damon.
All right, I like that. Alan, for yourself, we mentioned a little bit about like science and logic, things of that nature. Your character seems to be a very logic-based character, but he starts to learn a little bit more about like the demonic background of Anna. How are you able to really walk that fine line of saying, well, I don't believe, but I'm seeing more and more and more, and the change that goes on with your character?
I think that's, you hit it on the head in the beginning. It's, if there's a logical approach to Chris Yen, is that there's an inquisitive nature of who he is. The curiosity brings him into that, it pulls him in. I think the base of Chris is control and understanding what that means to him. And if there's something in this space where he doesn't quite understand and can't calculate beyond, what the potential outcomes might be, then he's going to go in and be sucked into it. I think when he first encounters this artifact that we first see in the episode, the first episode, right, is that immediate interest of like, what is this? Why does this exist? Why is it even here? Yes. If you think in the context of the world that he exists in, if he's fully in control of the auction house that he owns, then he knows every little thing that's in that space. In fact, everything is meticulously placed, as you can see when he puts like it was like a sword down, that right, it needs to be in this place. And then when you see something that is completely out of place and doesn't know what it is, there is that inherent curiosity. So yes, I mean, he is based on logic, but at the same time, that logic will allow him to investigate and interrogate certain things that doesn't seem right to him. And he's going to, his goal is to find the logic behind it. Whether or not that exists, I guess we'll find out.
Okay. And now for both of you, when it comes to your character, this is a character that's created in a comic and it has its own canon. But were you able to create your own type of head canon that informed your portrayal of the character on film?
Yeah, I mean, I think that my character, it's based off of a Marvel character, Gabriel, the Demon Hunter, but there was a lot of freedom, a lot of creative flexibility that we were really lucky to have. That does come with having to do a lot of homework. And for me specifically, when I landed in Vancouver, I remember like almost every day I would go to church. I went to confessions once. I did the rituals and like the practices just to kind of to get an understanding of the life that Gabriella lives day in and day out. And, read the Bible, all of this like research and all of this work that we did. And then on the day of, like when you start to shoot, you have all this homework and all this stuff that you've done to make yourself feel as connected, and then you just like throw it away. So I think a lot of times you really have to trust your partner, your scene partner, and whoever it is that you're like working on a scene with, to kind of begin to characterize who you are. And then the writers as well have a really interesting job, because we as actors are not told how things are going to unfold. So we literally are trying to both piece together who we are and live it as organically, as authentically, and as real as possible, while not knowing where it's going to go. We are just as blinded as the audience while we shot. So that was a really interesting experience. It was a lot of creative freedom, but definitely a lot of stress.
Yeah, it was a wild ride, to say the least, of trying to navigate your way through that process, because it is a different process that I think that we're mostly used to, in understanding that you in some ways have to create that foundation, but the minute they told us what the process was going to be like, of like, hey, we're not going to tell you ahead of time what the arc is, we're going to give it to you as the episodes are written and as right before we shoot it. So to us, I think that was at least gave you an idea of how to prepare for this and prepare for it as best as you can. For Christian, in creating the character Christian, he's actually not part of the comic books. He's a character that Paul created specifically for this world. But my concern when I found that out was, does this Chris, can he exist in this world truthfully? And he does, and then he's part of the mythology of what's created. And so that's, you do your research, you read the comic books, you investigate certain things, you ask a ton of questions, and you boil it down to the truth. And that's kind of the foundation that we created moving into as a springboard for the season.
Okay, all right. And just last kind of question for both of you. I know you guys are shooting in particular locations. Sometimes they were creepy, scary, anything like that. Were there any scary moments that maybe, hey, you still remember, and we would love to know?
Ariana?
I mean, I don't really think I was like ever scared. There was one time when I first worked with Beth that she just scared the shit out of me. And because she was so good, she was just really in it. And like just a moment before, we were having like a lovely conversation about her son, and then she has this, she goes into character and she has a different voice, different mannerisms.
Oh yeah,
like her whole behavior.
The scary voice thing.
Yeah,
the scary voice, and I was just like, whoa, what the heck? But like as far as locations, nothing creepy happened. We did have a ton of like very difficult places where we shot sometimes. Like we were on the mountaintop in Vancouver and it was like -10 degrees Celsius or something crazy, and then they had to like have fire somehow, so there was a lot of crazy stunt work. We had a ton of like special effects. I mean, yeah, the set deck was amazing every location that we were at, but I don't think it was as scary as I was expecting it to be.
Yeah, Beth's work was amazing. I mean, you talk about like just hitting, getting out of the gates as quickly as possible. The first table read, and I remember Bob was sitting next to me, Robert Wisdom, and I'm just meeting everybody for the first time. But off to the distance, like maybe 3 seats over, was Beth. And when I remember the first time, you remember this, Ariana, like we were sitting across from each other, I think, and she came
was right
and
next
she
to
started,
me, yeah.
Yeah, and then she came. I'm like, what is happening over there? Okay, this is where we're going. And
she brought the heat, and everyone else was like, okay, we gotta do that.
Everyone was like, okay, we're going there. And so I think that really lends itself to the experience being on set, because it is kind of jarring and scary. The locations, like Ariana mentioned that, I shot in one of those sets where it was in an abandoned hospital that was scary, and they said it was haunted, and I think it was, because there's a lot of certain things, that little writings that you see on the wall, and you're like, oh wow, there's some crazy stuff that was happening here. So yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you guys. It was a pleasure. Thank you for taking time out of your day just to sit down and talk to me. Just wanted to get as much info about the show as possible. Thank you. And you guys have a great day.
Thank you.